Now, when it comes to deductive reasoning, we apply three rules. The first rule we already talked about, your contrapositive. That is, if the conclusion is false, the only way that could happen is if the hypothesis is false. Now, law of detachment says this, that if I have a true conditional statement, that is, the P implies Q, if P happens, therefore, that's what those three dots mean. That means, therefore, Q must happen. An example, if the car is out of gas, it's not going to start. Sarah's car is out of gas, so what's going to happen? It's not going to start. Now be careful. It does not work backwards. If P implies Q and Q happens, the only thing I know is Q happened. So for example, if I use the same example I gave you, if a car is out of gas and it doesn't start, well, if your car doesn't start, we know the car doesn't start. We don't know why. It could be out of gas. Could be the battery's dead. Could be you're using the wrong car. There's a whole bunch of reasons that will happen. So it only works if the hypothesis is true. You've got to know P happens. So if I take a look at example 2, to go on a field trip, a student must turn in their permission slip. Right. Mariana turned in her permission slip. Now, notice on this one, I'm going to call turning in the permission slip, I'm going to call that P because that has to occur first, doesn't it? So it does go P, then Q. In this case, turn in your permission slip. Well, in other words, we've met P, haven't we? So this would be a valid conclusion. Now, if a figure is a square, I think I'll call that P. Then it's a polygon, I'm going to call that Q because it's an if-then form. So I know P, then Q. Notice figure A is a polygon, that would be Q. So in other words, I know Q happened. So the only thing I know is Q happened. So figure A is a square. No, I can't conclude that. That's going backwards. So this is not valid. The only way the law of syllogism works is if you know the hypothesis and therefore the conclusion must happen. Anything else is not true. Now, law of syllogism a little bit different, and I think it's a little bit easier. In the law of syllogism, it says, hey, if P happens and then Q has happened, if Q has happened, then R happens. Therefore, we can say, if P, then R. In other words, this only works if your first conclusion is the same as your second hypothesis. They've got to be the same. So the example I gave you, if you get a job, then you'll earn money. If you earn money, then you'll buy a car. If you get a job, then you will buy a car. Because I'm going to just go from my first one to my last one because my two middle ones are the same. If you think of chaos in that insurance commercial, that's a law of syllogism. Let's take a look at one of those.